Well, I'll be honest with you, I was born in Russia, though it would be much more pleasant that I am a local at Luhansk and understand the specifics of the region, but I'm going to be honest with you. I was born in the Moscow region, in a small settlement known as Mostringen. My parents were researchers, my father is a chemist, and initially I graduated from the Pedagogical University, and I worked for one of Moscow hospitals. I worked with patients who suffered from various kinds of strokes and traumas. But I had a dream to become a journalist, no matter how strange it may sound, but I thought we'd become colleagues. I was engaged in journalistic as a freelancer, and I was writing various materials, and at one point in time I was invited to work for the Russian government press service. It was a stroke of good luck. They were recruiting a big team, and I decided to fulfill my dream and took advantage of the opportunity, and I began working for the government. I was 24 years old. It was a long time ago, and I've spent quite a long time working for the government, then in the presidential administration in the division for PR and communication. And then I ended up with United Russia. And in fact, it was a good school for me, and it was a very good career path, career lift. It is a big organization where you are able to help people and implement social projects. My biggest desire was to help people. I began, as I've said, I was helping people who found themselves in difficult situations. I worked in a neurological department at a clinic, and then my life was transformed and took a different path. And when the special military operation was launched, you know that United Russia was very active in giving support to the residents of the new regions, new territories, and we combined the efforts of tens of thousands of people across the country. United Russia is strong because it can drum up support from all over Russia, from major federal okrugs to small municipalities. Sure. And the whole of the country, thanks to this uniting force, we managed to launch a large humanitarian mission. Once the front line was moved forward, once our defenders liberated a residential area, there was a humanitarian center set up with volunteers providing all necessary assistance, including foodstuffs, heating, medicine, doctors, everything that was needed by people who survived such a difficult situation. And therefore, I was visiting these new regions, and I was talking to people. I gave a helping hand to humanitarian convoys, and the People's Republic of Luhansk became very close to my heart. And though I was not born there, I became friends with many locals. And when there was the referendum conducted and all government authorities were established, and there was a question about who would represent the Luhansk People's Republic in the Senate, I received an offer to become one of such senators. Of course, it was a very exciting moment because it was a huge responsibility, but it opened up enormous opportunities to provide assistance at at a systemic level rather than just bring food portions or small-scale help, so that our new regions receive support that would be equivalent to what other regions across Russia are benefiting from. And I can tell our audience that the Federation Council has 2 senators from each region, and my colleague is a local, and she has worked in the Luhansk Republic for a long time, and I think it creates a good synergy. I have my background working for federal and regional structures, whereas she has hands-on experience, local experience, and we have a very good teamwork effort. And I have to say that I spend a lot of time in Luhansk. I visit people, I travel across the Republic, including those areas that are adjacent to the front line. So I'm not sitting in my office. I work in the fields, as people say. I talk to citizens of Luhansk, and when I come over to Moscow, I have to do the homework that was given by the locals to me, and I talk to federal structures to address various issues faced by Luhansk, and I try to address various of their needs and requests by providing budget funds, etc., to improve their lives.
Let me take you back. It's more from my understanding, because I'm fascinated by the period covering 1991 up until Vladimir Putin becoming prime minister, because that 8-year period was a disaster for Russia. And why I'm so fascinated by it is, out of that disaster, Russia has risen from the ashes. In fact, I was just talking to a colleague of yours, Katerina, and she's from a small town out near Rostov, and this town symbol is the phoenix. And I use the phoenix as, it comes out of these ashes and arises this big, new, beautiful bird. So where were you in the 1990s? I imagine you were a young girl at the time.
I was born in 1984. Therefore, it was my childhood period. I started school in 1991, but I can tell you that it was my personal strategy that I was a first grader. We were the first cohort that did not get that badge of honor of October children, and we were not pioneers. The life had changed, and as I have already mentioned, my parents were my mother had a PhD in chemistry, and they were intellectuals, and as you know, large institutions began to collapse. Their salaries were peanuts, and those institutions were leased to small businesses, and every institution had to survive the way it could. And my mother, with her PhD, being a researcher, had to work as a cleaner in one of the buildings because she needed to feed her family. She had me, and it was a very challenging period in my life and in the life of our family. It was indeed a nosedive and a destruction of the way of life we were used to, and we had, but we were at the minimum level in terms of foodstuffs available, in terms of everything else. But anyway, people coped with that. And of course, there are good memories, childhood memories, romantic memories, but this was indeed a very difficult period. And looking from the perspective of that period at today, we can see that perhaps the leaders of our country, the government, and the government have done the impossible, because from the perspective of history, it was but a short span of time since then. And if we look at what our country was, has been, and is now, from the reputational perspective, from the perspective of opportunities available, these are two entirely different things. And when people start criticizing our president, this argument is sufficient to demonstrate how much he's done and the gratitude that people feel for him and his authority.
I don't know if you appreciate it or not, but in the United States, with the current Secretary of the Treasury, they really believe that by imposing sanctions on Russia, they can create so much economic pain for the Russian people that they'll throw out President Putin and they'll give back all the territory in Ukraine. And I keep trying to say, that's crazy. You don't understand. If you had a chance to explain to, like, Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent why he's wrong, what would you say?
Well, you know, we have an expression in Russia that may be relevant here. We are adopting a budget, but this situation is difficult, but we managed to cope and meet all the challenges, and we keep complying with our social commitments to the people that we have assumed. Of course, the sanctions could serve as an argument to say, you know, the situation is difficult. Unfortunately, the payroll will go down. Social benefits cannot be paid out. But what do we see? We have not only managed to maintain the life quality, but we keep improving the quality of life. We keep adjusting all the payouts to inflation. We are there's indexation. People are discussing everything with each other. There is a complete information transparency. But at the same time, people see that there is but practically zero impact on their life. Of course, I'm not talking about the nuances that we have lost opportunities to buy foreign-made clothes or foreign food. We've lost opportunities to travel overseas. Yes, it's true. We do not deny it. But the politicians who are using these arguments do not understand the mindset of Russian people. And this is not that important. What is most important is that we have opportunities to raise our children. We have preserved the sovereignty of our state. We can move on, go forward, and develop. And tangible things I mentioned, well, perhaps it is a sad nuance, but it is not something decisive that could have influenced the overall situation or the mood of our people, of our citizens.
Yeah, it is and that's why I started off with the discussion about the 1990s, because America hasn't experienced anything like that. Maybe the last time was the Great Depression in the 1930s. So we have no point of reference to really appreciate what has happened in Russia. And, you know, my first time here in the Capitol was in December of 2023. Mm-hmm. And it was just mind-blowing. You know, I've been to New York City, I've been to Paris, I've been to London, I've been to Cairo, to, you know, Buenos Aires, Brasilia, Rio. I've been to cities around the world. I've never seen anything like Moscow. And it's not just the physical part of it, it's the people too. Because Russians are so naturally generous and giving. And it is a completely different mindset. I think it's a mindset that's reflected in how Russia interacts with other countries. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Абсолютно.
Absolutely.
Мы искренне считаем,
We sincerely believe, our citizens believe that we have the best cities in the world. And of course, Moscow is a city that is not only, whose appearance is beautiful, but it is a city that is comfortable to live in. Our federal and regional authorities are thinking about comfort and life quality and how our citizens will feel. And you have put it correctly, that the stresses we've gone through became a stimulus for us to develop.
Yeah.
You know that Russian people, as proven by history, become
получает стимул.
stronger. They acquire an incentive to move on under pressure. And the goods, commodities that we lost are now an opportunity to produce our own goods and to produce better goods. If not for the sanctions, perhaps our industry would not be developing so quickly.
Yeah.
And this is a strengthening opportunity to become stronger across the board. This relates to our agriculture, our industry, our science, etc.
Yeah, I spoke to Mr. Galushka during my last outing, and he's written, I think, a very important book about the Russian economy. And, you know, I think one of the surprising developments from the sanctions is that Russia realized we don't need them. We don't need the West. And which is why Russia now has produced my understanding, two brand new jetliners, commercial airliners, that are built entirely from components within Russia. Not a single import from overseas, because Russia said, we can do it ourselves. And do you think, let's go back 4 years ago. Do you think 4 years ago the Russian people appreciated that they could actually do a lot of this themselves, or was it the result of the sanctions that awakened them to say, hey, we can do this, we don't need the West?
Конечно, я, наверное,
Of course,
правила, если бы
perhaps I would be cunning if I did not admit that it was not a stress when Russians woke up and said, it's great. Of course, we had to go through that moment, and it was not clear how things would unfold. But before the special military operation was started, we had been going through several stresses. The stress after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, but then there was the COVID pandemic, and it was a huge stress for our country, and no one understood where to go. But by that time, we realized that even under such uncertainty, even facing such threats and challenges, we can bottom out with honors. You know that the entire system, administration system, the government management system, and everything else was restructured very quickly, and we developed our own vaccine. And going back to this, the most important thing is not something external or tangibly material, but something that is internal. And our president addressed the nation on day one of this special military operation. He was not scared to do so, and he explained everything. He said why we were doing that, why we could not do otherwise, that Russia is not an aggressor, that the people of Donbass are those who need our protection. And this inner need to help, to protect people, to protect our brothers who are living several kilometers away from us, people with whom we have a common mindset, people who speak the same language with us, require our assistance and protection. And I believe that this was the principal argument to make everything else less important. If it is needed to protect people, we can survive, we can cope, we'll join our forces. We see that in hardships, Russia is able to unite around the strong president, around our flag, despite discussions and diverse views and misunderstandings in the past. But if there is a big goal in front, we'll be able to unite and overcome every challenge.
How has the political support, or what has been, particularly within the Duma, have you noticed a change in sort of the political support for the special military operation? Go back to February of 2022. Were there initially some doubts like, do we really need to do this? Is this the right thing? As compared to now, where does the political support, or has it changed at all over time?
Сейчас абсолютно.
Well, there is an absolute political support of the special military operation. You can judge by looking at various ratings and opinion polls. Of course, there were individuals who opposed it, and many people have left the country, you know that.
Это были люди,
But these were people who
по-настоящему ментальность России никогда.
were not with Russia mentally. Those Russians who genuinely love our country had no doubts. I have already told you about the humanitarian effort that was started almost on day one. It is not something that can be faked. This was, if we look at the distance of thousands of kilometers from Kaliningrad to Vladivostok, people collected humanitarian cargoes and sent them to Donbass. Those people who doubt the correctness of the decision would never do that. We saw real-life support from the entire population of the country, and we believe that it is a people's story. It is not something that is pushed forward by the president or the government. This is something that people can relate to. I travel across various regions, and even in a small populated area, in a small village, people actually need camouflage networks. They make trench candles and collect various necessities for the front. People who are not interested, who cannot relate, would never do that. It is a people's fight. Every citizen in this country understands that this is what our future depends on. And I can tell you that it is not something that is off the wall, that is, a decision made instantly. We've been witnessing the developments in Donbass starting in 2014. Some of our citizens traveled to Donbass to help people since 2014, and we observed the events as they unfolded. We saw the House of Trade Unions where people were burned to death, and we saw children murdered, and unfortunately we know hundreds of children killed, and we have the Alley of Angels in Donetsk, and people go there and they leave toys there. And I know stories told by people from Luhansk. There could be no other choice if someone has moral principles.
I'm going to change just a bit, but I want to get some more history out of you. One of the other things that fascinates me about the Russian people is let's call it the legacy of the Great Patriotic War. almost every family, even today, is still affected in one way or another. Did your family do you have a particular story or history with respect to your family on either your mother's side or your father's side as far as the experience of the Great Patriotic War?
Вы правильно сказали, что это
You
практически
made the right comment that it is a personal story of each family, and this year is the year of the defender of motherland, and there is some connectivity between the Great Patriotic War and the special military operation. You know, this is and today many people have grandfathers who fought in the fronts of the Great Patriotic War. I can tell you that none of my relatives fought during the Great Patriotic War because my grandmother and my grandfather were still small kids during that time. But my grandfather was a military man. He was 11 years old when the war began in 1941, and despite his young age, he worked at a Tambov region plant, and he made steel hooks for uniforms. And this is when he realized that serving his motherland was his calling in life, and he took part in designing military jets, and he was involved in designing aviation engines, and he finished his career as a colonel, retired as a colonel.
Yeah, that is the experience of that Great Patriotic War is another thing that binds Russians to Russians. And I would note it affects how one interacts with the world. I note in my own country, we suffered very, very few casualties from that war. I don't know if the average, Russia experienced 27 million fatalities. The United States, in just the war in Europe and in North Africa, 189,000. I mean, that's nothing. And I now believe that one of the reasons the United States has been so eager to get involved with wars and overseas, whether Vietnam, Serbia, former Yugoslavia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria. We've never paid a price in blood like Russia. Russia has paid a price in blood. And that price has given Russia caution about getting involved with such things. Do you think that is an important factor in Russian decision making?
The most important factor in decision-making in Russia is the inner factor, the feeling of justice. Of course, our president has repeatedly said that the price that we are paying today, we are looking at the ongoing events as well, not only the Great Patriotic War, because you involuntarily look for analogies, because we are going through this today. Of course, we have to look at our military war tactics and at the price that we are paying. The president has repeatedly highlighted it when he responded to opinions that we have to be more active on the front line. We should not we should be more active. But the president said, let us be more careful. We have to be careful. We have to spare lives. Our mindset was such that if you want to sacrifice something for a just cause, for the idea you believe on, in this case, we are ready to pay the highest price. And going back to Donbass, you know that there's the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and there is the right for self-determination. And when a particular nation, when people want to exercise their right of self-determination, it means that they have reached their boiling point. When people are not allowed to speak their native language, when people are not allowed to believe in God the way they want to, then this is the time when the price may be high.
Yeah, the way I see the trajectory of this war going, while some in the West think it can be settled through negotiation, which I think is just a polite term for surrender on the part of Russia. I don't see Russia surrendering. And what I've, for the first 3 years.
Yes, surrender and Russia are incompatible words.
I mean, I'm not even sure there's a term in Russia for that. But I've now come to realize that one of the reasons that was behind, let's call it the relatively slow advance of Russian forces in 2023 and in 2024 was in fact the slow, let's call it the slow recruitment. In other words, the ground forces of Russia were building up its strength. And it was not being done in a panicked way. It wasn't being done as a wartime mobilization, hence a special military operation. But now here we are in 2025, and we're seeing the Russian ground forces at a level where instead of only conducting, say, in 2023 it was one major operation in Bakhmut, and in 2024 a major operation in Avdiivka. Now in 2025 they're operating in at least 8 or 9 different places, whether Pokrovsk, down in Zaporizhia, Dnipropetrovsk. I think Russia has gathered a momentum now. Is that something that the legislators in the Duma understand, or do they have a different view of the progress of the war?
We can unequivocally say that we are proud of our military men. We are proud of their bravery and their heroism, because every day we get information from the front line about men fighting from various regions of our country. We can see that there are not only Donbass volunteers, there are medical professionals, engineers, teachers, musicians from Omsk, Tomsk, Vladivostok and Kazan, and from many more regions. This is a fight that has united the whole of our country. We understand that if we do not succeed there, it will pose a big problem for each region in this country, and our soldiers are fully aware of it. Speaking about our tactics, military tactics, I'm not bold enough to judge, because it is for the Ministry of Defense to consider, and for the professionals who are responsible for the military operations. Therefore, I would not comment on that. But who are the judges? And where are these criteria? How can we measure whether our advance and progress has been fast or slow? And a few minutes ago, we were talking about the price we pay. And our military also understand that we should not leave the regions that we fight in a scorched ground. Those areas are inhabited, and civilian casualties have to be considered as well. We should not level to the ground everything. And in Donbass, we fully understand how much time is needed to rebuild cities and towns and return to normal life. Each water pipeline, each school, each new building, each hospital, or everything requires several months of meticulous effort to rebuild the way they were before. Therefore, this is also a very important argument. And of course, our task, if you ask us as parliamentaries, I can assure you that the support that the special military operation has and the support to our soldiers are an absolute priority. There has not been a single meeting of the Federation Council for us not to discuss this topic. There are more than 140 laws that are related to this topic because we've been considering each situation in a lot of detail. It is crucial for us to make sure that our soldiers understand that their families are protected. They perform their duty, feeling safe, that their families are safe and sound, and for them to know that when they return home, everything would be okay, that their jobs would be preserved, that they will get every social support they need, that there will be a rehabilitation provided to them. So this is a day-to-day work that we do constantly.
Well, one of the other things I've been come to appreciate, and it deals with the Russian mentality. Russia, even going back during the Great Patriotic War, tried to avoid civilian casualties. Unlike the United States and Britain, who bombed civilian areas without regard. They'd kill civilians. And basically, candidly, it's very much like the Zionist attitude towards civilians. You can kill them; they're not worth protecting and preserving. It struck me that Russia's always had a very, very different point of view of, no, we're going to avoid civilian casualties. That's not the way you win war, by killing civilians. Let me close because we're running out of time. How important do you think it is that is Russia, while carrying on the special military operation, is working with China, with India, with South Africa, and with Brazil in developing this new world economic order? I'll call it BRICS. That it is, it's moving into a multinodal or multipolar, but it's a completely different way to look at the world compared to the old world of the U.S. dollar as the hegemon.
Well, Russia has always been about consolidation rather than competition. So the world that you have mentioned, the civilized world, you have listed. These are the countries that rely on mutual respect, on principles of mutual support and assistance. Because in Russia, we always say, together we are stronger, both domestically and externally. If there are countries who share our values, if they are ready to move forward and make each other stronger without actually restricting each other's rights, this is our way forward. And for us, it is the only possible image of the future. You know that in this country, there are almost 200 ethnic groups, nationalities. And if we proceeded from the principles of competition, that would never lead to any positive result or success. We support each other. We survive by respecting and supporting each other. And these are the principles that we rely on in the international arena. A multipolar world is the way forward that our president has always proclaimed.
Well, listen, Senator, I thank you so much for this. It's been an excellent conversation. I have learned a lot from you, and I wish you continued success. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I think we're clear.
Спасибо.
Thank you.